Hey guys, what is up? TML here. So, this video is basically the interview that I had with Michael Fisher. If you guys don't know him, he's a very popular YouTuber, and well, basically watch the previous video, you'll kind of talk about this in a bit more detail. The link will be down in the description. So yeah, basically the full-length interview of Michael Fisher and me. Now, we talk about Apple and Android phones and which ones are better, so if you are interested in that, I highly recommend you watch this. It is a podcast, so there's no visuals, unfortunately, so I guess you'll just have to listen to it, and it is quite long. Now, if you want to see the full radio show, that will be on my Vimeo channel, which will also be linked down in the description below. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. Now I'll be talking to a specialist in this field. He spent the past 4 years reviewing technology, formerly known as Captain Two Phones, a member of Pocket Now. He's also a writer, sailor, podcaster, actor, you name it, he's done it. But for today, it'll be a tech reviewer, also known as Michael Fisher. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Tilak. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So, Michael, as you've already told you, that this show is going to be about iPhones and Androids. Without further ado, what's your take on the whole matter? What do you think the best features are of Android phones that iPhone doesn't really have?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I think the iPhone, the Apple versus Android thing is, there's an awful lot of distractions in this space. There's a lot of bluster. There's a lot of posturing that goes back and forth, you know, because people self-identify based on what phones they use, because they're sort of like cars, you know, they're an expression of their self-expression in this age. But it's, you know, it's funny because it doesn't, whichever one you use, you do have a similar experience. Like most apps that are on one are on the other. Most functionality that is on one is on the other. It's just a question of what little details you value and what ecosystem you sort of invested in first. So while I could talk for hours about the tiny differences, you know, like the iPhone has a silent switch and the most Android phones do not. But you have an option of hardware on the Android side. You can carry one of hundreds of phones, and on the Apple side, it's like, okay, well, the new iPhone and the old iPhone. Yeah. You know, so it is a very, very broad question, and it's one that has provided a lot of fodder for media people like me over the years to talk about.
Yeah. So taking on what you've just said, what would you say would be the top number one feature that you like in an Android phone?
It's got to be the customizability. On an iPhone, I feel boxed in a lot. I feel like, okay, this works really well, but I'm using the phone how Apple wants me to use their phone. And for a lot of people, that's fine. They just want it to be this thing that we're just like, I just want it to work, and it's a phone, whatever, I don't care. I don't use phones that way. I want my phone to operate exactly the way I want it to work. You know, from changing the color of the interface to putting a calendar widget where I want it to go, to like changing the font if I want to. You know, I want that level of customizability. And Android provides that, and iOS really doesn't. So that's definitely my number one feature on the Android software side.
Could I have the same again but for the iPhone this time?
Sure, yeah. It's so tough because iOS does so many things well, but I often don't prefer it. But, you know, I guess I would have to say stability on the whole. There have been some bad versions of iOS, yes, but on the whole, I don't get as many errors. I don't get as many app crashes on an iPhone as I do on Android. Android is much better than it's ever been in this regard, but if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I want the simplest, most reliable phone there is, and I don't care about the price, well, okay, go get an iPhone, because it's just going to work. Yeah.
What would you think the worst feature of an Android phone would be?
Inconsistency. So, like, you know, I can't easily sit there and tell someone, like, okay, well, what's the best thing about Android? Well, there are 450 different phones that you can get, and they're all going to be updated differently. The manufacturers are going to be great or terrible with security updates. They're going to be great or terrible with just usability updates. You know, it's so inconsistent. So I sort of forgot the question, but that's my least favorite part of the Android ecosystem.
Same again, but for the iPhone this time. What worst feature do you think the iPhone has that maybe could be improved?
I think Apple really sucks at cloud stuff. Whether it's on the iPhone or on MacBooks, like I often have iCloud errors. It's always pestering me to log back in. When I do want to synchronize it takes more steps. I think Google really, really has a much better handle on cloud sync stuff than Apple does, and that shows up anytime you need to do something on your phone, whether it's backing up pictures to the cloud or re-signing onto a new phone when from an old one. I just think Google has a better implementation of all that.
Really good answers. Basically, what I want to be trying to find out is, do you personally think, from your experience, is there a better phone? Could you class an iPhone, for example, better than an Android, or would you say Androids are better than iPhones, or would you just say they're like all good in their own aspects, or what they do best in?
The latter, that they are all good in their own aspects and what they do best in. That is the truth, but it's also something of a cop-out answer, right? And it's not a very useful one. So it's like, here's what I will say: if it's me, I'm gonna buy an Android phone. That is my preference. I think the things it does better work better for me. But as if there is such a thing as an objective answer, I think the iPhone does a better job of justifying its price point. If you're going to spend the same $650 on either an iPhone or a Pixel or a high-end Android phone, the iPhone does a better job on the whole of making that price worthwhile, based on just stuff as narrow as waterproofing to as broad as like Apple has hundreds of retail stores all over the country that you can take that phone to, and it has a better accessory ecosystem and blah 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 blah. So yeah, I think the iPhone is a better buy for most people, but only in that very specific segment, only at that very specific high price point. Once you introduce other variables, you get somebody who's like, I don't want to spend that much money. Well, then Android instantly becomes a better option, and it's also a better option for people who are more invested in the Google ecosystem than the Apple one.
Yeah. Am I taking this right then, that iPhones aren't actually better than Androids, or Androids aren't better than iPhones? They're all good in their own different ways.
That is true. Yes, and that is what I have said for years, and it is the truth. But unfortunately, it's not what people want to hear. They want a simple answer, right? So it ultimately, though, it all comes down to what you want, what set of priorities are important to you, and that is as subjective as like anybody buying a car, anybody shopping for a house, anybody looking for a mate. You know what I mean? Like, these are buying a smartphone is a very personal decision, and it takes some research.
No doubt in saying that your daily driver will probably be S7 or any Android
What, a Galaxy
phone?
S7?
Yep.
No, I like the S7. I admire it. I think it's a good phone, but I don't prefer its software, and also I just don't like carrying the same thing everyone else carries. So at the moment I'm using the Pixel a lot. I like it, despite how frankly ugly it is.
Yeah.
But I hop around a lot. Right now, if you had to pin me down, I could only give you two, and it would be I jump between the Pixel and the OnePlus 3T a lot.
Right, and basically this radio show is mainly targeted towards a younger audience. So if I was taking me into consideration, 14 to 25-year-olds, what phone would you recommend to a younger audience? Because I know there's a variety of phones you can get out there, and it can seem like a daunting task of what phone do I get? Should I get the most expensive? Or what do you reckon the best phone for a beginner would be?
Sure. And it across Android and iOS, or within one of those?
Oh, yeah, just between both of them.
For a beginner, I mean, any kind of beginner is gonna, I think, be drawn to the simplicity of the iPhone. Which is not to say the iPhone is not capable of complex stuff, but the home screen is just a grid. Like, it doesn't get any simpler than that. And the iPhone still does a lot of things better for that younger demographic, or at least a couple things better, like Snapchat, for example. I mean, it sounds obvious, but really the iPhone does have a much better implementation of Snapchat in a couple different ways. So, if you've got the money, go for the iPhone. And if you don't have the money, the iPhone SE is an affordable one too. I think that's down around $400 too. So, yeah, I would tend to think the iPhone is the better way to go. But if you're a young person without a lot of money, there are tons of options, even below $200 now in the Android space. Like the Nextbit Robin is a really weird one that I like a lot, and it's a great buy for a low price.
And just the final question is basically, where do you see technology going in the future? I know you've been doing it for 4 years, so maybe in the next couple of years, do you think Apple will actually change anything, or do you reckon there'll be big advancements that will push an iPhone or an Android phone a lot further than the competition?
Yeah, I think Google is probably better positioned in this regard, which sounds crazy because Apple is just basically
Yeah,
sitting on a mountain of money, and it's well earned because the iPhone has been great. But I think Google is better positioned for the future in terms of its machine learning stuff. The voice
yeah,
search, Siri is kind of a joke compared to what Google can do with Google Now and the Assistant, and that
yeah,
more and more, that's what the future is going to bring us. Is just more artificial intelligence interaction, and Google has a much bigger set of data to pull from. All it has to do is learn how to make phones hardware better. But it doesn't really need to do that because Google has an army of manufacturers that already make hardware that's more impressive than the iPhone. So, yeah, I do think Google is better positioned for the future. That said,
yeah.
I think Apple has shown its ability to adapt, and it is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it going away anytime soon.
But what would be the one thing that you'd probably want to change in the iPhone? If you had anything at all you could change for a day, what would you change in an iPhone?
Me personally, I would change the interface to something that I would just ask for 3 different home screen options, like the stupid grid that we've dealt with since 2007, or like a card-based one like old WebOS used to have in the Palm days, or just a wide open desktop that let me put anything on it. Like, just let me do that. That's what I would change about the iPhone first.
And just the same again for the Android. What would you change about the Android? One thing.
Oh, one, yeah, right, because there's so much in Android, right? It's this massive canvas.
Yeah.
So if you're just talking about Android itself, stock Android, what would I change? Yeah, I'd bring back background version 4 ice cream sandwich. They had this really bold aesthetic, this kind of neon, hollow,
Oh, yeah,
Tron-like thing. Yeah, wasn't that cool?
yeah.
I'd bring back some of that semblance. I think Android has gotten a little more timid in terms of its software design. The visual aesthetic is a little just too comfy, and I don't know. It's boring to me now. I would like to see a little bit more of that boldness creep back.
In the same area, I love tech and filmmaking and stuff. Do you have any advice for me at all?
Yeah, it's a really saturated market now. Weirdly, right? Like it seems like everyone has a tech channel, and it can be kind of tough to break in. But I think if the simplest advice I could give is to try to avoid doing what everyone else does. Like, if I see one more video that starts like, "Hey guys, what's up? It's me back with another video," and I'm like, I'm done. I'm 3 seconds in, I'm already over it. So I think my number one piece of advice is to have something to say and try to say it differently than most people are doing it. And if you do those things and you're doing well, it's tough to fail. So
Yeah. That's pretty much it for questions of me. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure's been mine. Yeah, no, Tilak, thank you very much. I'm always down to talk about this stuff, so I appreciate you having me on.
Talk soon. See ya. Bye bye.
We'll talk soon. Bye.